Okay, today we're going to speak about Mars and the history of Mars. But first, we're going to do a little tiny review. It's about sect rejoicing by solar phase. So if you have Ancient Astrology, Volume 1, and you don't have to because this diagram is in many different books, I want to explain how it works perfectly like a clock. So in last video, some people who were not in the group but commented, they said, no, the planets don't move clockwise. Yes, they do. They move clockwise. And I'm going to show it to you right now. So you can look at page 99 in Demetra George's book. And I want you to also use your mind's eye and just think for a moment. The sun rises in the east. The sun goes up, up and over, and then goes around and under. Because remember, this is a geocentric model. So this is here, the center, where the Earth is, okay? Every day, the ascendant-descendant line, the sun, no matter where it is, so say the sun is down here, the sun every day moves up and across the eastern horizon, right? It comes up in the east. Up here is straight up at noon, okay? That's generally what you call the midheaven. And then the sun goes down this way across the descendant on the western horizon, and it sets. And when it comes back here, instead of being at, say, 25 degrees, it comes back here and it goes tick, 26 degrees. Okay? It goes 26 degrees. So every day, all of the planets go like this, and then they go tick, a movement either forward or retrograde in the relationship to the sun. So on page 99, Demetra shows that movement, and that is how you know what's called sect rejoicing by solar phase. Only Hellenistic astrologers use that. So the way the clock works is the sun goes around like this, but then it goes tick 1 degree forward. So if it was at 25, the next day it might be at 26. So in your mind, the appearance is, oh no, the planets are moving counterclockwise. No, they're not. No, they're not. They're moving clockwise. They move this way, and then on the completion of the circle, they go tick 1 degree forward. And the way that you know that is from the ephemeris. So the ephemeris, which I tried to show this week in a live video, if you follow the ephemeris to 2025, you will see with the sun particularly that the sun moves 1 degree forward every day. So in fact, the sun goes like this. But what you are doing as an astrologer is you are drawing its movement through the seasonal depictions. Okay, because it moves like this, but then it goes tick, 1 step forward, 1 step forward, 1 step forward. So that's why I say it's a wheel within a wheel, electromagnetic levitation. What's going on here is literally a wheel within a wheel. These spheres are spinning, okay? And just like your hand vortexes, you can spin them inward or you can spin them outward. And what happens in astrology is every day the planets go like this. So in the morning right now, and I did this yesterday morning because the sky was finally clear, you will see before the sun rises, Venus and Jupiter will be in the east, and they will move. The whole thing, everything's moving. Everything is moving. So that's why when you understand solar phase on page 99 in Demetra's volume 1, you will understand that what you're looking at, because people are going, oh, no, no, the sun isn't moving that way. Yes, it is. It's moving that way, and then it's going boop, 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 boop through the seasonal depictions. That's how it works. Now, another way to look at this is on the pages 124 and 125, and that will show you the movement of the objects. And the movement of the objects are based on the solstices and the equinoxes, and the Earth is at a strange angle. It's at a 23-degree angle. So everything that I do in Hellenistic astrology is based on things moving around the Earth. Now, say that you were on Mars, because we're going to do Mars today. And you're standing on Mars. So say that you're standing here and you're actually on Mars, you're not on Earth. It would be the same thing. And instead of wondering where Mars is, you would be going, the Martians are going, oh my gosh, Earth is conjunct my ascendant. Oh no, Earth is conjunct my ascendant. That means I'm going to have to be honest. I'm going to have to be loving. I'm going to have to care about people. Oh my gosh, Earth is conjunct my ascendant. You see, so as an astrologer, we've lost a lot of the connection with what I'm going to call cosmology. What's going on out there? If you get a book like these free books from the library, and this one was discarded at the library because it's for 2024, it will show you the same thing. So I looked it up this morning. It will show you the movement and how it's moving. And also here is a picture of one of those stone alignments that align to the center star Polaris, but everything is moving around like this. And people don't really understand that. So there was a lot of argument. And people who don't know anything about astrology, because they've only looked at it like on a computer and or in a book, and they don't really look out in the sky and see where is the sun rising, where is it setting. Okay, so it's rising over there, it goes up and over, it goes over there into the west where I have my fire every night and watch the sunset, and then it appears to go under the earth. Okay, that's what an IC is. An IC is below the earth. An MC is midheaven or above the earth. And that's where people get confused because your brain's going, wait a second, I thought it went Aries, you know, blah, 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 all the way around. This is an event chart, not the theme of Monday. And that's where your brain gets confused. So know that, just really get this. This is ascendant, this is east. The sun goes like this every day, and then it ticks forward 1 degree. That's how the clock works. So when you get an email from me, it'll say, because it's a clock, it is literally a clock. That is what's happening. All right. So now I wanted to read a little bit on the history of Mars, because each of these planets I've been talking about, not just their keywords in astrology, but what is the history of Mars. And I want to offer this little book, The Way of the Shaman. This is Michael Harner, who developed core shamanism because he was an anthropologist that lived with many different groups. And when he was studying with different groups of the Americas, different tribes, he was asked to sit with the head seers for quite some time before they allowed him to understand their religious beliefs. Let's call it religious beliefs, their cosmology, their understanding of the world. And so when he does his first journey, after really getting tested by the shamans to see if he was, quality and he was going to be able to do this journey, they did allow him to do journey work. And what he saw when he came through the underworld experience was he saw reptilian creatures reposing sluggishly at the lowermost depths where the top of my spinal column, I could only vaguely see them in what seemed to be a gloomy, dark depth. And then they projected a visual scene in front of me and first showed me the planet Earth as it was eons ago. I saw an ocean and a bright blue sky, and then black specks dropped from the sky, and they were actually large, shiny black creatures with pterodactyl-like wings. They flopped down, utterly exhausted from their trip, resting for eons. They explained to me in a kind of a thought language that they were fleeing from somewhere else in space, and they had come to Earth. And then later on page 9, he is sitting with one of the elder shamans, and he tells them that he came to the dragon-like creatures and their arrival from space, and they said to me that they were the masters of this world, and they looked like giant bats. I could not describe what I had seen. He was describing this to an elder shaman in the tribe that he was studying with. And the elder shaman, who was sightless, was a blind man, said, "Oh, yeah, they're always saying that they're the masters of the realm, but they are only the masters of the outer darkness." And that is repeated throughout this book, The Way of the Shaman. Because what Michael Harner experienced in his very first shamanic experience was he wanted to know where was he and how are these creatures somehow related to us or part of the earth realm as we know it. And I would say that my knowledge of this is that they first came to Mars, destroyed Mars, so Mars is a dead planet, and then they came to Earth. And they are hiding in what's called the interstices of the Earth environment, so that when you journey to what's called the lower world in the astral realm, and I was speaking about that before we got on the call today, that we might do some journey work by October so that you can really journey energetically and get to know these planets. So he's asking like about the cosmology of where we are right now. That is what a shaman does. That's why anyone who's studying with me, what you're studying is you're studying as a shaman. Your particular focus is in reading the cosmology given in charts, but you at any time can journey yourself, if you're brave, to Mars and understand a little bit through time. Like he time traveled back to how did these things get here? What are these things? And that's what I used to do because I was a shaman before I was an astrologer. So I would naturally want to energetically know what is Venus, what is Mercury, what is Mars, what does the quality of Mars hold, who lives on Mars. And we do know that Mars was the main place of war and the feeling of needing to defend oneself or stand up and fight and be strong. The other thing I want to say is that Mars is part of the infection, I would say, and how we got altered, and his particular theory of like right through the limbic brain, where we've all been altered to have a certain amount of reptilian characteristics, which is in the limbic brain. But these things are intruders here, and yet they will say, We are the masters. We are your gods. We are the creators of your civilization because they are terrible liars. So that is the thing about Mars. Now, when you have Mars in your chart, you will have your natal chart Mars, and that is the one that you primarily operate from as an energy is what is Mars doing in your natal chart. And then what I will show you is my progressed Mars and how I'm operating now that I've totally incorporated and mastered my natal Mars. And you will see that then I can write like the highest octave or keywords that are the possibilities because I've really mastered my natal Mars. And now I'm moving into my progressed Mars. There's also a solar return Mars. And today we have a transiting Mars at 11 degrees Libra, which I also showed how to find that in the ephemeris. So there's several different layers of Mars that you might be operating from, plus the people in your household and where their Mars are. So everyone needs to really understand Mars because it's a dead planet and it's the first of what we're going to call the malefic planets. So believe it or not, Mercury is not considered a malefic planet, even though to me it's the ultimate trickster and thief, but it does have some good qualities of helping to develop communication, which can also be very tricky and deceitful, but also your neural pathways, your ability to speak many languages, use your fingers with real dexterity. So that's Mercury. Venus that we did last week, you know, she's considered the lesser benefic. And yet, you know, she has that whole retrograde quality of going down into the underworld. And she also has the quality of like desiring things and piling up a lot of stuff and putting on airs and also jealous hate and femme fatale. So that's Venus. So now that you know those are the benefic planets, oh my gosh, what are we going to encounter when we get to the malefic planets? Oh my gosh. And that's just the nature of the neighborhood that we happen to be in. We're in a fallen neighborhood. So imagine again, I have to review a little bit that we fell from Tara. Well, we fell from Andromeda, then we fell from Tara, then we fell from Gaia, and then we're in the lowest possible denominator, which is called Earth. Whenever you fall through the densities so that your environment and what you see is going to depend upon what density you are vibrating at. So right now we're in a bad neighborhood, but that's not what we are. And that is what I really want you to understand is it's kind of like the economy, you know, when you're suddenly forced into a bad neighborhood and you can hardly afford to pay rent because you've been reduced and reduced and reduced to the lowest denominator and you can't even figure out how to get your car registered or even have a car because it's all so difficult and you've got some overlord taxing you and causing scarcity. That's Mars. Mars is the lesser benefic, amazingly. And yet you need your Mars. You need to have your Mars intact and understand your Mars because otherwise you're going to get flattened in the road. Absolutely run over here. So I'm for using your Mars correctly and also knowing the conditions of your Mars. If your Mars cannot navigate because it's in what I told the group before we started the recording and applying geometry to Nessus, if your Mars is somehow an applying geometry, applying means that its number is the same or lesser than the planet Nessus that it's applying to. And I already checked your charts, so don't worry about it. But then that's the kind of person that I've asked my students to be careful about taking as a client the first time. Because when you have Mars and Nessus together and your client's not going to know why they're dangerous, they just think that they're justified in their rage and their danger. Mars and Nessus are a bad combination. Of the two people that I've not allowed to be clients, it was a Mars Nessus conjunction. So there's only two in the history of me as a teacher that I have said, no, I'm sorry. And that is all Mars Nessus stuff. I'm not trying to say that that is their fault either, because I'm not sure how that happens. But when that is the case, you want to be careful because, like these teachers, the shamanic teachers, you have to study with them for years, and they still might not teach you because you have to qualify yourself as someone who will not be dangerous with the medicine that you have. Because what Michael Harner found is that these original people, these tribal people who were still practicing shamanism, he found that anyone who was not qualified would start using the shamanic skills as a dark art, very dark. And so that's why we as master teachers have to be careful about who we accept. And you as students also want to be careful and prepared that if you suddenly see a Mars Nessus situation in the chart, before the recording, I said, just use this book and read directly from the book. So it neutralizes anyone who would otherwise want to like defame you, say nasty things about you, take you to court, call it discrimination, or whatever it is that the uninformed might want to do with their own personal Mars. Because what Mars is about, it's about hand-to-hand combat. So I used to say when I taught this, and all my old astrology videos are in a playlist too, that if you go to Mars, they don't want to use like long distance weapons. I've heard this from people that do journey to Mars and have energetic abilities. They like to fight head on. They're hand-to-hand combat types, and they love like the blood and the gore. So if you listen to some of the draconian speakers who are out there, they will say, and I've reviewed them when I did the Blood Wars material, they are still saying that the draconians are vicious, psychopathic beings, and they will pretend to be making a deal with you, but there is never going to be a deal. You cannot trust the pretty words. Think Jeffrey Dahmer, right? There'll be all kinds of surface pretty words and nice behaviors, and it looks like they're the victim. Jeffrey Dahmer was considered the victim, and they let him out again and again and again. And he only had a Venus Nessus conjunction. So imagine if Venus is the benefic and it's Nessus that he's raping, murdering, and eating people with his Venus Nessus conjunction. Just imagine for a moment a client with a Mars Nessus. Okay. And that is where you have to draw the line to keep yourself safe, because the next thing you know, they're going to be instigating some situation and blaming it on you, because Mars is one of those impulsive planets, and everyone has it again. So don't beat yourself up. It's one of those impulsive planets that cannot take responsibility at all. So you have to know your Mars very intimately. And if you should have a Mars Nessus transit coming up, say Mars is in Libra right now, but it will eventually get to Pisces where Nessus is. On that day, if Mars is doing something with Nessus in your chart, I would say be very careful that day and watch. You should all be having an ephemeris by now. Watch, okay? I can open this up right now and say, goodness, when is Mars going to get to Pisces such that it comes into contact with Nessus. And it looks to me like it will be next year in 2026, in the spring of 2026, Mars will come together with Nessus. Now, for clients that are trying to conceive, and I had someone just yesterday who just fell in love and he's so happy and he wanted me to do the synastry chart with his new love, and they're thinking of getting married and having babies, and I'm going, holy crap. Please stop now. Oh my gosh. Because, like I said 2 years ago, with the Saturn Nessus conjunction, if you have a baby with a Saturn Nessus conjunction, folks, you're going to have a sad, sad, difficult life. Well, so if they get pregnant right now and they get married and they get pregnant right now, because this was the topic that I had with a client just yesterday, and I hope you're listening. By the time you give birth, there's going to be a Mars Nessus conjunction. And like Stacy was saying last week about when they did the rituals for the Venus cycles, well, if they want a mass murderer, go ahead and get pregnant now, folks. Yeah, it's really incredible. It's unbelievable what you can do as an astrologer. But again, your client will be mad at you. They'll say, Lalita, how can you not love babies? What are you talking about? Do you know how many times I've heard that? I have been accused of being a fear mongerer. This morning, I was accused on a comment that I was just like a Jehovah Witness, judging everybody and trying to scare the crap out of everybody. And from your perspective as an astrologer or as a shaman, nobody wants to hear the truth, but they want to blame it on you. They want to say, oh, Alita, you're such a fear mongerer. But I am truly, from my beautiful client that I had yesterday, who is completely in love, and I'm so happy for them that they found each other, and it's a good match, really it is. But then they want to have babies when Mars is going to conjoin Nessus. What would you tell them? Would you lie so that they come back to you 10 years from now and say, what did you tell me, that I should marry this woman and have babies? Oh my gosh, Lalita, you told me the biggest lie. Or do you want to protect them because you truly care? And there is the dilemma of being an astrologer, which if you're really an astrologer, you also have to be a shaman. The academic astrologers, I cannot do them at all. They don't know what they're talking about. And there again, now I sound like I can be accused of being a Jehovah Witness because I have opinions that are based in true experience of wanting to protect my clients. So that will be the question. If you have someone that comes to you who has a synastry chart, and it's a beautiful synastry chart with a new love that they've just fallen in love with or whatever, and they're like, we want to have kids, we want to get married, this is going to be awesome. And you go, be very careful, because if you get pregnant and have babies by next March and April, they're going to have a Mars Nessus conjunction. And you'll bring in a murderer. So, and that's just the fact. And there will be a lot of people who accuse you of being a fearmonger, as all shamans are accused of being a fearmonger. Imagine when Michael Harner was releasing this material from his journey work in the 1960s. He didn't release it until the 1980s. This is a book that was not written until 1980, because then enough people had used ayahuasca or DMT or journey work, or there were anthropologists out there studying with true shamans. And he found out the great cosmic jigsaw puzzle that we're in, because we are in a great cosmic jigsaw puzzle, and astrology really helps, but so does shamanism. He didn't release this because he also said that primarily women were the shamans. But what happened was they were herbalists, they were seers, they're very receptive, they're mystics, the information comes through. What happened was that all of the women who saw, who had the sight, or gave a remedy because someone got pregnant against their will, they were burned as witches. So Michael Harner, what, and he documents that they were burned as witches. And I have another book over here called Elixir, um, about the shamans and herbalists and medicine people of like Romania and Bulgaria. Same thing. These people were majorly decimated because they had shamanic knowledge of the cosmos and the other worlds where the reptilians live, and nobody wanted to hear that. So there would be like a gang up against a truly gifted seer or shaman or medicine person. And now we're in trouble. Now we're in big trouble because we've got people like, what's his name? Peter Thiel, Thiel. He's giving, I mean, this is the AI guy of the, holy crap, Peter Thiel. He owns, with Elon Musk, Venmo and PayPal. I mean, he owns billions of dollars of how they're doing like the digital herding of humanity. And he's going to give a talk on the Antichrist. Oh my gosh, people. But would a woman mystic like me ever be invited to talk about that? No, no. But this guy, you know, he can just, without any truth or experience, through AI, show all kinds of his versions of the Antichrist. So it's getting that weird. And we're coming into this period again right now where those of us who know some stuff and have access are going to have the fingers pointed at us. And that is the nature of the game here. Like, you have to really persevere. In that way, you need to know your own natal Mars and how to defend yourself, because what Mars is, and it's not part of our regular nature, again, because we've been reduced down into this neighborhood of very bad neighborhood, but you have to know how to defend yourself. So you must know your natal Mars. So let's look at it in charts just real quick. And I showed before we got on, because I said we would start at 11:30 for just some important stuff that we need to do before the recording. But this is the Genius Act. And I used a pendulum over top of the chart to ask a question about this Mars. And as I was asking the question, I had already formed it telepathically. So the pendulum started spinning before I even got the words out of my mouth, because telepathic communication is how humans used to operate. If we were all telepathic, I would not need to defend myself. So I am defending myself virtually every day, all day long. All Claude sees me doing is deleting and blocking unbelievable comments that come at me. And the one psychic that I had this week, who I was talking about before the call, it is scary out there, folks, because people want it for $3.99 in the drive-through Dunkin' Donuts, and don't you darn tell me a bad thing. I want to get married to a rich guy and have children next week. You know, that's basically where we are with humanity. So when I was asking the question, I was thinking, gosh, this pendulum can even hear me telepathically. If only everyone could be honest, we wouldn't need to deal with any of this solar system. I think we would have already passed through the solar system and out of here. So we really need to get our telepathic skills. And I also want everyone to know, like, my Mars is very strong, folks. It's trying to Jupiter, but it's in Aquarius, so it's not in a negative, like I don't hurt people. But if I wanted to, because of my Mars and my Jupiter, whoa, do you all not know what I could tell about the private sessions for years that I have had, that I know what's going on here? But as an astrologer, you have to keep that confidential. But once we have telepathy, everyone will know. And we must go back to telepathy. Prepare, because I already have it. My telepathy is very strong. And yes, who I study with is also perfectly telepathic. So she can hear my mind all the time. And it's incredibly embarrassing, but I'm like, I have to be that honest and with that much integrity that anyone could read my mind at any time. And I'm very straightforward in my sessions. So back to this Mars. The question I was asking while I was holding the pendulum over it is, because this Mars is hidden in a house that does not configure to the Aries ascendant, it is the ruler of the ascendant, but it's hidden in the sixth house. So I held my pendulum over the paper and I said, will this genius act affect our health in a negative way, or something like that? And the pendulum was swinging before I even get the words out of my mouth, because the pendulum is hearing my telepathic communication. We shouldn't even have to speak. So the Genius Act, one way of doing your astrology personally and privately, is here's the Aries ascendant. Mars is its ruler, the steersman of the ship. It's found in the sixth house of health, pets, or slavery. And I would say, given that we are already seeing new weird prohibitions against pets, where people are having their ostriches taken away from them, some states have outlawed having cattle or horses, and some states are now, and some countries are now outlawing dogs. So I would say, okay, already we can see this event chart with Mars in the sixth house is having some problems. The other thing is, this is a house of like servitude or slavery, and the Genius Act very much sets it up that people would be in the condition of absolute servitude and slavery to the coffin of conformity, because they can freeze your bank account. So yes, that would affect our health also, because it would be tied to a digital pass. All right, really unbelievable stuff. So that's how you use it shamanically. If you want to ask a question about Mars and it's the ruler of the ascendant and it doesn't seem visible or witnessed by the ascendant, you can hold a pendulum over the chart. And as long as you're energetically clear and you don't have any possession, then that pendulum should answer you very accurately. So that's a shamanic approach. Now let's look at what I've written for Mars. So everyone should have this handout, and you should know already that Mars is the ruler of Aries and Scorpio. So just like Venus, it has two ways of behaving. It prefers Aries. So Mars in Aries is very direct, very like head to head, hand to hand combat, or way of being very upfront when you're speaking to someone. Depending on what house it's in, is whether that works for you or against you. All right. So it can be very effective, say like in the 10th house, where you're really like excellent at your job and getting work done, because then it just gets up and goes and it does work. All right. Whereas if Aries, Mars in the first house of your own physical body, it can cause damage to you in your physical body. So that's like how you apply it through the signs is, and the houses, where is it operating? If your Mars is in Aries in the 10th house, because that would be the theme of Monday, then you're using it appropriately. You're out there and getting stuff done. You're just working, you know how to get up first and get things done. That's Mars in Aries. But if it's a domicile lord, say in your first house in Aries, the damage is going to be to you, really hardcore to you. And I showed a chart before we got on, because I don't like to do people's personal, unless they're a public figure like Jeffrey Dahmer. You're really not supposed to present it in a public way and record it and show the whole world. So that would be up to you and your integrity with that. But Mars in the first house square to Nessus and fourth, Mars in Aries in the first house, square to Nessus in Cancer in the fourth, that's going to be very challenging, damage to you, which then gets blamed on other people. Okay. And that is just the way that chart works. The other sign that Mars rules is the back end. So Mars rules Aries, which is the front end, like boom, head to head, hand to hand. I'm right there. The back end of Mars is Scorpio, so that's its feminine sign. When Mars is in Scorpio, it'll sting from behind. It'll settle the score. It'll like build up information. It'll sting from behind. So just know that that's its other domicile lord. And then its exaltation lord, which I want to get into with Mars, is Capricorn. Mars in Capricorn, I had a session last week of a woman with Mars and Capricorn in the 11th house. So, you know, the 11th house is not personal to her, but she really stood up for herself, Mars in Capricorn, and was a really hardworking, self-responsible single mother of one child who is just a stellar, beautiful client of mine also. So his mother has a very powerful, exalted Mars in Capricorn. So then what you do to find where is Mars in the fall. So if Mars is in exaltation in Capricorn, its opposite sign, Mars in Cancer, is necessarily a fall because it's an exaltation in Capricorn. You go right across the chart and you say, okay, Mars in Cancer is in a fall. So when Mars is in Cancer, it can be very hurt. It can feel really hurt because it doesn't want to hurt anyone else. And then it doesn't always necessarily stand up for itself, and it ends up getting walked over. Now, in one condition of that Mars, I would say that the kindness of your heart is the way you fight. Like that's Mars in Cancer. It's like you kill them with kindness. You're so good and you're so moral. That's Mars in Cancer. There's another condition for someone in the group that I'm going to speak about. It's called a mutual reception. So if your Mars is in Cancer and your moon is in Scorpio, they're in each other's sign. All right. Do you understand? That's called a mutual reception. So that gives a little bit more strength to your Mars and a little bit more strength to your moon. So that's called a mutual reception. I have a mutual reception in my chart where Venus is in Sagittarius and Jupiter is in Libra. And this is hard. And sometimes I have to teach you this very personally with charts. That's also a mutual reception, which gives my Venus a little bit of strength, you know, a little bit of like nice jewelry when you need to. Because I have a mutual reception. So that's another thing you can understand about Mars is look at your planets and say, if Mars is in this sign, oh, okay, so I have another example for someone in the group. If Saturn is in Scorpio, and then Mars is in Capricorn or Aquarius, because those are both Saturn sign, that is a mutual reception too. And if you didn't get that, you can listen to this recording 10 times and write it down and then try and find it in the various charts that you're working on. So that's a way of giving a little bit more power to some of the planets. It's called mutual reception. It's like you're in your friend's house and you're just like your friend. So you know how to navigate their house because you know how to use their cookware, and you would put the garden where they put the garden. That's kind of like a mutual reception, and I'll explain that some more later. So where is Mars in a detriment? When you're looking at Mars right now in Libra at 11 degrees, that's opposite to Aries. So you know that Mars is in a detriment in Libra and cannot bring about its like decision points or, argument or proper aggression is when Mars is in Libra. Then Mars in Scorpio, the opposition to that is Mars in Taurus. So again, Mars doesn't like Taurus so much. Just think about it. Think about why it wouldn't like Taurus so much, because Taurus is slow and steady. It doesn't want to move fast. So that's the opposition to um, Scorpio is Taurus. So then you try and work that out in your head and know that when you have a client with Mars in Taurus, they're not always get up and go people. They tend to learn faster, they tend to move slower, and so forth. So, those are some things about Mars. Mars is a red object, so it's with the color red. And I'm wearing red right now. It's associated with iron. So, its material metal is iron. And when Claude was having a very hard time because he has a stellium in Aries, okay, and Mars is the ruler of that stellium in Aries, and Uranus was going through Aries, and it was very difficult because it was also that Uranus was going over every one of his personal planets and trining his Mars in Sagittarius. So Demetra said to him, wear iron, wear pure iron. And Claude went to a blacksmith because it's very hard to get pure iron, but there was one blacksmith still. So if you have a Mars in difficult condition in your chart, wear iron. The other metal that is associated that has a lot of iron is this black stone. It's called hematite. I'm wearing a bracelet. I have this hematite. So if you have a client who has a lot of Mars problems, and you might be a therapist, you can have them sit and hold a hematite, and the hematite will help them calm down. Take a breath. Relax. Hematite is a stone, and the quality is that it's supposed to take away some of the pain of Mars. The other way that you know people are having problems with their Mars, which I kind of associate with the root chakra and the fight or flight energy, like fight or run away, or the other one is FUCK or fight. Yeah, I'm sorry if your children are watching this or listening, but it's that kind of energy. Mars is really like, Mars is a tough planet. I'm going to get into that a little bit more, but have them hold hematite. Mars is also associated with sex drive because it rules Scorpio. That's its sex drive application. Like that magic wand down there, you know, the shape of Mars is the symbol for men. So if you have clients with Mars and Scorpio, they're going to have a very high sex drive. And you want to help them to relax that and understand the whole bigger breeding program here, because there are a lot of interesting comments on my Facebook, very interesting comments on my Facebook page right now about the breeding program. And I'm not sure I can say all of this, so you just have to go to my Facebook. But the number of ABORTIAN that happens every year, and all of those products are sold. So I have Dr. Lee Merritt talking about the truth, and I've seen plenty of documentaries. All of that is part of the breeding program. Okay. And it is, all of those parts are sold, but are also in. And it's quite disturbing. So that's that Mars energy, like Mars and Scorpio, and the whole idea that men are from Mars, women are from Venus. I don't know if that's true, but Claude is like, yeah, men are from Mars. It's true. In his chart, Mars is on the IC, trying all his planets in Aries. So he is very like, yeah, it's true. It's true. Men have a very hard time with this. And there are, I think the number was off the charts, like 69 million ABORTIANSs every year. And all of those parts are being sold. So if you have a high sex drive because you have Mars in Scorpio, Try to overcome that. Try to use it in a more magical way or a way that you can get things done. Use Mars in an efficient way and, have some hematite around. Hold on to the hematite rather than watching the addictive stuff that is being put out there on purpose that a lot of males are addicted to. And they watch that, and that gets their first chakra, and it siphons their first chakra right off to the reptilian world. That's what is going on. There was something else that I wanted to talk about. One of the last blogs that I wrote was that the Me Too movement will never work. And that's when my whole website was taken down, because I explained that unless you understand Mars, unless you understand this whole thing is a breeding program and that women are not supposed to ovulate every single month, we are not able to get control of ourselves. So we need telepathy so that people are more honest. And instead of accusing me of being a fear mongering person, they would actually know what was going on and why I have to have such strong boundaries. But also, we have to overcome the breeding program. And as Katie said last week, Venus is lust. It has nothing to do with love. And so, in night charts, which are the moon charts, the people that were born at night, Mars and Venus are the friends to the moon. Why would Mars and Venus be friends to the moon? It's because that's the reincarceration program, the moon, Mars, Venus. And when you have Mars and Venus in synastry, so my Venus is in Sagittarius, Claude's Mars is in Sagittarius, you will not be able to resist that person. Let me tell you, and I have said this before, if there is a dating app for hot sex, it's matching the Mars and Venus. And so Mars very much is about fighting, but it's also the male passion that like push, push, push. Claude's story is that the reason that he has a child is because he impatiently had to have sex with some woman on a train. Yep, that's Mars, folks. That ain't love. That has nothing to do with integrity. That's just purely Mars. Okay. So that's the energy of Mars. And as I said, Mars is a dead planet. So what are you actually feeding? You're feeding the reptilians. You're absolutely feeding the reptilians. And the other thing was, why are there allegedly millions of children missing every year? Dr. Lee Merritt, millions of children. I found a whole bunch of same articles, millions of children. Where are they going? Mars. It's all about this energy of conquering, of fighting, of all of that stuff. So this is the reptilian planet that is in our neighborhood. I don't know what's there now. You can journey to it. As I said, you can do a little bit of journey work. You can use a drum or a rattle or just meditate and journey to Mars if you're brave. And you can find out the true history of Mars and where these beings came from, just like Michael Harner did. And he was amazed. So he was so freaked out, his heart almost stopped when he saw these beings. They are absolutely terrifying. And yet they will say that they are our gods. And that's what they say. When you meet them, they'll say, "We are your masters." They're creepy, creepy, creepy creatures. Okay, so Mars represents strength and the will to conquer, and it was understood by ancient astrologers as destructive to the human life force, and I would agree with that. It is considered malefic along with Saturn. They prefer hand-to-hand combat. It represents aggression, drive, urge, and male passion, but also female passion. It can symbolize the male principle of hero or conqueror, or the shadow, which is a violent person who is a destroyer. In the house and signs, the aspects of Mars shows the straightforward approach with a high degree of determination and readiness to take on conflict. So again, if you have the theme of Monday with Cancer ascendant and Mars and Aries in the 10th house, you're going to be a great employee because you get up with that readiness, that determination, the straightforward approach, and you just get things done. So, Mars in the strength in the chart is how you stand up for yourself. And if you're not aware, because you're kind of unconscious about your root chakra or your limbic brain, so your limbic brain is where Mars ties into, but also your root chakra, color red, then you want to read a book like this and get really honest with yourself about how your Mars operates. So, Mars represents pioneers, warriors, daring adventurers, soldiers, athletes, competitors. It's said to rule the muscles, the blood, the body's heat regulation system. And I want to talk about that. And the male sexual organs. So, last week when we did Venus, Venus rules the female sexual organs, Mars rules the male sexual organs. So when you say you have a child that has a really strong Mars, you want to give them an outlet for their aggression. You really want. And this book has some fabulous ways of understanding that. And maybe we'll play around a little bit with like, what's your best outlet for aggression? Watch out for Mars and Nessus in any kind of either conjunction, grand trine, square, or whatever. If it's separating and far past, then don't worry about it so much. But if it's an applying geometry, be very careful because that person throughout their life is going to have tendencies toward the aggressive part of Mars and also, aggressive sexual tendencies and rape and murder. I'll just be very straight about that. If we look at Jeffrey Dahmer's chart, he had Mars in Aries in the 7th house. And I told like the 7th house has to do with open enemies who are also considered your partner or your lover. And he had a moon in Aries too. So very impulsive, not able to control his impulses. So that's why I say you have to be able to discriminate before you take a client, particularly as a new astrologer. If you don't know, hand them over to me, okay? Or read directly from the book and keep your distance. So it's the color red, the metal iron. The day of the week is Tuesday. If Mars is very powerful in your chart and you can't really deal with it, use hematite. The goal of astrology is to make the subconscious conscious. So when you find Mars in your chart, you start to find out, are you acting assertive in a positive way, or are you acting like an absolute brute, like an absolute unconscious brute? And Mars, because it's connected to the limbic brain, is pretty unconscious for most people. People do not like to take responsibility for where they caused the damage also. But they want everybody to just, accept them as they are, as unconscious brutes. So this is Claude's chart, very cute, way back when he was studying with me and Demetra. And he has his little cute Mars down here, which trines his full stellium in Aries. Aries is in the 8th house, so very unconscious, does not configure to the ascendant. Mars in the 4th was a lot of dangerous behaviors that Claude learned in his family home from his father, and then became very unconscious behaviors with his 8th house. So for Claude, most of my work with him was shamanic. Like I did massive amount of shamanic clearing of those traumas by using a drum and rattle and soul retrieval. For you, you may not know how to do that with your client, but that's the way I did it. For years, I worked just shamanically with Claude. trying to get him to understand what Barry Long calls the pygmy I, which is Mars. Mars is the pygmy I. It's your lesser egoic self that acts absolutely unconsciously. So you must make Mars conscious in your chart. Now, I wanted to read you my Mars and my two different Marses. So here's my progress chart Mars, and I've already shown my natal Mars several times. But in my progress chart, it's the same. It's in the 5th house. So just like my natal chart, Mars is still in my 5th house. So now I'm going to show you how to put it in words. If it's in your 5th house, you can start with I create, or my sexuality, blah, blah, or my children, my relationship with my children is blah, blah. Okay. So that's how you set up any conversation that you're going to have is first you say by house. Okay, so if it's in Mars in your 1st house, you say my body, my character is related to, and I showed before we got on a Mars and Aries in the 1st house, related to, and then you go right to Mars and you say, okay, is this person the hero and the conqueror, or are they acting in the shadow as a violent person and a destroyer? And then you have to help them say it. And you need to say it as an astrologer in a very graceful way that the person in the 1st house, Mars, you have to give them some words so they can be conscious that they might be very harmful to themselves and to others when they have that Mars. And they might bring upon themselves very violent situations. And if you've done a chart with me, you know that I often will say, be careful of this, be careful of that, because we need to be honest about these conditions. So you say it by house. If it's in the 2nd house, you say, I receive self-worth and value from my Mars is blah, 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 blah. If it's in the 3rd house, you say, I study and communicate and have the relationship with my siblings. And then you say Mars, blah, 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 blah. And then by the sign that Mars is in, and so forth, all the way around the chart. If you have Mars in the 4th house, you say, okay, in my home and family, because you've got to start it with the phrase of where the Mars is operating. That's how you do it. The next thing you do, and remember, in Introduction to Astrology, we're just learning ABCs. Like by the time you're done with this course in this year, you will literally have like ABC level astrology. So to get beyond ABC level, you need about 10 years experience with these. But so forth, you go around in how your Mars operates. And then by the sign, so say your Mars is in Leo, I'm just making something up right now. It's the nobility, it's the regal behavior, it's the courage, and it's also the playfulness of the Leo sign if your Mars is in Leo. Okay, you understand how that works? If your Mars is in Virgo, and I'm not saying by house right now, I'm just saying by sign, you would say is the perfect dosage for an effective cure. Okay, because Mars shows how it approaches things. So if your Mars is in Virgo, Virgo's precise, it's the perfect seed, it's the right dosage. So when Mars is in Virgo, you would say, my Mars, and then by what house is it in, and then by the sign creates the perfect dosage for blah, blah, blah. And then when you have the asteroids, you can also use the asteroid that is there and say to create blah, blah, blah. All right. And that is the way you put it all together. So we're definitely learning a language. Astrology is a language. So for next week, I would like all of you, the assignment is, if you've not done it already, to write all the words for your natal Mars and your progressed Mars in your charts. So I'll give you my example. This is how you would set it up, just like this. My natal Mars at 26 degrees Aquarius in the fifth house. So my natal Mars at, put down the degree and then the sign in, and then the house in the fifth house. And I wrote, is the urge to discover as I create eccentric approaches to pursuing a goal, my strength, because Mars is your strength, and way of fighting, because it is your way of fighting, is through revolutionary, unpredictable, experimental, but ingenious action. Now, why did I use the word action? Because Mars is about action. Why did I use revolutionary, unpredictable, experimental, and also the word eccentric? Because it's Aquarius. All right, so I think people are starting to get this now. So again, my natal Mars at what degree? What's the sign? What's the house? And then put in the keywords for how it's acting. And then to do your progress chart, you can either count forward in the ephemeris 1 day for every year that you've been here. So I think my progressed birthday is February 4th of 1970. You can also put the archetype of your natal Mars. Like my natal Mars is the lone wolf because it's in Aquarius. And Aquarius is like that hermit that lives on the hill alone. And I do. Except for Claudine, as you're here, I live absolutely in the boonies, absolutely alone with nobody around me whatsoever. So clients will often say, well, you have people to talk to. I'm like, what are you talking about? I live absolutely alone in the middle of nowhere. So that's how the archetype works. And then in the progress chart, you say it like this: Mars progressed versus my natal Mars. Mars progressed to Aries in the fifth house. So again, I'm saying it's in Aries and it's at 7 degrees in the fifth house, makes my creative drive, because it's the fifth house, my creative drive, or you could even say my sexuality, although it's not so much that anymore because I'm getting towards 56 years old. But my creative drive is spontaneous, courageous, and heading straight for the goal, because that is a progressed Mars in Aries. So then I'm heading straight for the goal. Boom, my creativity. Spontaneous, courageous, heading straight for the goal. Also, my willpower, which has to do with Mars, is active because it's about action, self-confident, roguish, which means that I don't fit in with any of the boxes, and ready for even the most impossible situations. So that is my progressed Mars. And then the next layer is, what are those Mars doing? And I'll tell you, in my natal chart, Mars is in the fifth house, Jupiter is on the ascendant, and it's a trine aspect from my Jupiter to my Mars. So I always have a lot of energy. I'm very positive and optimistic, which is Jupiter, but I'm also going to defend myself. And as an astrologer, if you don't know, you're going to need a very strong Mars. You really will, because before we started recording, I talked about a psychic who just is shaking all over before she even starts her day because of the predatory nature. It's like, what has happened to humanity at this point is they all have Mars Nessus conjunctions, in my opinion. Yeah. Mars progressed retrograde. If it's a Mars progressed retrograde, then you're reviewing, you're going backwards, you're reminding yourself, and you're not direct, straight ahead, moving forward. you're going backwards through time. All right. So if you have a progressed retrograde Mars, your ability to stand up for yourself is going backwards. Okay. Reliving experience, all those words. When retrograde, you're redoing something that you didn't do well the first time or so forth. Okay. So that's a retrograde. The other thing that you do with the progress chart is you can see in this little example that I have the Mars is separating from the Chiron right there. So Mars is past the Chiron. But for a while, Mars was exactly conjunct my Chiron. And that is when I had a really hard time with my children. And my children were, calling me a conspiracy theorist. They didn't understand what happened with the mass psychosis event. And that was when my Mars and Chiron were exactly conjunct by progression. And I looked at it and I was like so relieved to know that it was just Mars conjunct Chiron in my fifth house. Like, I couldn't help it that my children didn't trust me and wouldn't listen to a video by Dr. Lee Merritt. I mean, I just couldn't help it. It was in the chart. And that's where if you run your progress chart, you may like be like, "Phew, no wonder my kids don't like me. Mars is moving over Chiron in the fifth house right now. And it was active there. It was rough. Okay, so that's where you want to look at the condition of your Mars. Are men from Mars? I don't know. I mean, given that the archaeological record is really showing, and I've shared that video before from the various archaeologists, like Katil, what is it? The place in Turkey, and also Chaco Canyon. When they did the archaeological digs in those places, they were all women. So Chaco Canyon is a very ancient, like beehive formation of people living in a community, all in like these circular beehive groupings. They were all women, 100% women from the same mitochondrial DNA line. So that tells me that if they were all the same mitochondrial DNA, there was no male at all. There was no male. So really, Sandy's been to Chaco Canyon too. Yeah. I've been all over the West and backpacked and hiked all the BLM lands and yeah, stayed in tents and did a lot of journey work out there too to find out what was going on. So they don't tell you that the archaeological record is that we were all female. So are men from Mars? Or did the woman, which is one person's perspective, did the woman start to create the Y chromosome because she had to defend herself against the reptilians who took the women of Earth as wives? I don't know, but I think it's an important question to ask because now as we're seeing the reverse of this, where the Y chromosome is almost completely depleted at this point, the scientists say that in 25 years, there's not going to be a man on the planet. We're already in an extinction event anyway, so, but the Y chromosome was already going back to just X, XX. So I do wonder about Mars and where the Y chromosome came from, but I'm not going to make any like deciding statements. Claude's statement was, because Mars is on his IC, that men are from Mars. That's Claude's opinion. And he said it was a good experiment. So, Claude doesn't have many words to say, but he gets right to the point with his Mars. Yeah, we're from Mars, and it was a good experiment. I'm sorry, sorry it happened to you. So, anyways, that was what I wanted to show you with Mars. Do we need to look at Jeffrey Dahmer's chart? Do you need more information on Mars? What would people like to do at this point? You can write a comment or you can unmute yourself, but then if you unmute yourself, mute yourself again, because last time people forgot and we heard a whole bunch of papers and stuff on the recording. Any questions on Mars, or we can play a game with the outlets for aggression for Mars? And what would you like to do with Mars now? Oh, there's nobody making decisions? Maybe that's because Mars is in Libra. Nobody can make a decision. Oh, let's play the game. Okay. All right, good, Amelie. Let's play the game. Okay. So here is the outlet for aggression for one particular sign, and I'll give you a little bit of a hint. This Mars is a detriment. It's a detriment Mars. So their outlet for aggression is playing a defensive position as a goalkeeper. So those of you who are athletic coaches, and I know some of you do teach sports and athletics, this one is a defensive position. They make a better goalkeeper. Or like when I played rugby, I played second row. I played defense because my Mars is an Aquarius, but this is not Mars and Aquarius. But anyways, a defensive position because they are tough as nails, cannot be subdued, will put their full stubborn weight and defiance into the goal of defense. Does anyone have any idea what Mars that is? Defense, stubborn, full weight, staunch defiance. Yes, Starling, very good. Mars and Taurus. Yes, Cass. Yes. So, if you have a team, and I think somebody teaches volleyball or whatever you teach, your kids with Mars and Taurus, put them in the defense role. They don't like to be offense. They will protect that goal like a stubborn bull, though. They will not let that ball get in the goal. Okay, okay, that was a good one. Mars and Taurus. Okay, here's the other one. This one is outlet for aggression is chess, playing chess. They're quick, they're lively, they're thinkers, and they tend to manipulate through games like chess. That's their outlet for aggression. Anyone ideas? Think strategy, think clever. Yes, Lauren, Gemini. Yeah. So Mars in Gemini is a huge strategic thinker. If they've got Mars and Nessus in Gemini, they will be trying to outsmart you nonstop, like a chess game. Like they want to take your king and queen. Okay. So that's Mars in Gemini. But if they don't have the Nessus there, they're just good sports that like to think fast. And chess is a really good thing for them. So quick and lively thinking. All right, here's another one. Outlet for aggression is cleaning. Cleaning and handicrafts. Mars that likes to be tidy and clean up. You're getting it. You're totally getting it. Yes, that's Mars and Virgo, the right dosage. Let's be tidy. Let's be careful. Let's be critically careful about things. That's so they like to clean. And they also, I think that makes, like, if you're going to be a doctor or a healer, I think Mars and Virgo is really good because they want to help. They want to clean. All right, here's another one. This one is very direct and certain of victory. They are loud and make dramatic scenes. They can beat other people just with their ego barking out orders. Donald Trump. Mars and Leo. And I'm not saying everyone's Mars and Leo is like that, but there's other things in his chart. But yes, you are all correct. So very direct. He's certain of his victory. He's gonna win. He's gonna make America great again. Barking at the other person and just saying it so loud that no one else can get a word in. I'm sorry, but there's also good places, but that's in his first house. And he also has Pluto there, so he's a bit of a torturer with the Mars and Pluto in the first house in Leo. Okay, this one's outlet for aggression is deep sea diving, harpoon fishing, or aggressive sex. Sea diving, fishing with a harpoon, like stab them, or sex. Yes, Scorpio. It's embarrassing, isn't it? Yes, Amelie. Yes, you're getting. It's embarrassing to say this to a client. Imagine saying this to your client, and you will start to understand my life. Like, it's very hard for me to say that. Um, and if you have a tough, like really passionate Mars and Scorpio, and I've had one man and I would still take him as a client. That Mars and Scorpio, he was sleeping with his own child. Um, it's hard, but if we had perfect telepathy, and people could not be dishonest about what has gone on here, I don't think we would have like the level of rape and incest. But you, as an astrologer, are supposed to help your client with these type of things because Mars is completely unconscious. They do not even know that sleeping in the same bed with their own child is like not acceptable. But he said that when he was a boy, he was stimulated by a babysitter and he thought it was good. He liked it. And that's because he had Mars and Scorpio. Like he liked that, but it was completely unconscious in him that he should also not do that to his child. So my explanation to him was I had to tell him that. And then I said, I think your boy should live with his mother several states away. And he agreed with me. So if you're a truly good astrologer or a counselor or a doctor or a friend or a coach or whatever y'all are, or a shaman, you have to be that honest. You have to say, you have a very high level of sexual energy and sleeping with your own child, even though you liked to be stimulated by a babysitter, an adult, you need to let your child go live with someone else now and have supervised visitation only. It's that much of a headache. I mean, it's a huge responsibility to be an astrologer, and you have to be very honest. Huge amount of integrity. Okay, here's the next one, because that one's tough. Oh, gosh, that one's tough. Remember, that's Mars in its dignity. Throwing poison darts is also in there as an outlet for aggression, but I didn't even want to say that. Like black magic. Oh yeah, we'll do that one too, Stacy, but we're not there yet. Um, Mars in Libra is a different one. So I just said it, so I'm going to just say it to you. This one is a detriment. Let me ask you in a different way. What do you think the outlet for aggression would be for Mars and Libra? Now think of it in a different way from your own mind. What is Libra? Start there. And then say, what would Mars be in Libra? And then you can write your own astrology book because the outlet for aggression there would be dancing or fencing. Like, let's fence together, like pretending that we're going to stab each other, but we actually love each other and in doing like a martial arts dance. So that's how you can do it in the reverse. You can start thinking about, oh, if Libra's the artist and loves to create beauty and be very diplomatic, what would Mars do there as an outlet for the aggression? And you go, oh, You should dance. You should dance with people and then look in their eyes, and then you would get out your passion and your artistic nature that way. Okay, so let's look at another one. This one is mountain climbing, cross country skiing, survival training, and trekking up mountains. Mountain climbing, cross country skiing, also ice hockey, survival training, and trekking. Yeah, people are getting it. That's Capricorn. What was the giveaway? What was the giveaway? Why was that Mars in Capricorn? Climbing. Yes. The mountain goat goes up the mountain. Exaltation, Mars. I'm going to keep climbing that mountain. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep trekking. I'm going to keep surviving. I'm going to be able to do even ice hockey that's cold and horrible. Yes, that's Mars and Capricorn. Good. Okay. Swimming, deep sea diving, listening to fantastical music. Swimming, deep sea diving, listening to music. That's right, Sandy. Good. Yes, Mars in Pisces loves to merge with the water. And if they're feeling overly aggressive, we're going to just go in the water and float around like a mermaid. Enjoy some deep diving down into the springs and so forth. Okay. This one is interesting. Kite flying, parachuting, and sailing. Kite flying, parachuting, and parasailing. That all sounds very scary to me, but oh, not Sagittarius. Yeah, Mary Ellen, you got it. That's it. Parasailing, nobody else is around. You're above the whole world. You're aloof and you're rising higher. Oh yeah. Mars and Aquarius, kite flying, way up, way up. Now, I'm gonna keep doing Mars. Oh yeah, you see it now, right, Starling? Yeah. So parachuting, you're coming out of, a plane. I don't know, that sounds really terrifying to me, but you're way above it all. You don't have to interact with anyone else. You're just flying away through the ethers. Yeah, that's Mars and Aquarius. And because I was born with Mars and Aquarius, I always had difficulty keeping my feet on the ground. Really difficult. So I used to dream all the time that I kept floating up and up through the dimensions and I couldn't get back. That was terrifying to me. I kept floating up and up and up. Yeah. So Mars and Aquarius is like you can't get back down, but you've got the big view from above. Okay. Yeah. So parasailing, kite flying. All right, here's this one. Hunting, riding horses. This one has holy anger. So it needs to hunt and ride horseback. Yeah, Stacy, that one's Mars and Sagittarius. When Claude got a horse, yeah, Starling, Sagittarius. When Claude got a horse, and he was a halflinger, Claude was terrified of that horse because he never had any pets and he had grown up in a kind of an elite type of household. His father was a professor, Harvard graduate. And he'd never even seen a large animal before. Like I grew up on a dairy farm, so I'd seen everything and rode rodeo when I was a kid. But Claude got to Curly and he thought he was going to control Curly, right? Our halflinger. And Curly was like, oh, I'll just go faster then. I'm gonna go faster. Oh, you gonna be angry when you're putting the saddle on? Well, I'll dance around more. You'll never get that saddle on. So for that experience with Mars and Sagittarius, which is a fire sign, can be very fiery. The horse is a great teacher to that person too, because you cannot rush a horse, folks. So if you have Mars and Sagittarius, you better have all the day long to ride that horse and get the saddle on and clean their feet correctly and get the bit in their mouth and take care of them and make sure that they're okay, because if not, you're going to get a wild ride. So it calmed Claude's Mars down. It was an outlet for his aggression, because if you're going to deal with a halflinger, which is a draft breed mixed with an Arabian, oh my gosh, it's fast and it's capable. So you want to get the right kind of horse for that Mars and Sagittarius too. Like, you don't want to get them a horse that they beat up on. You want to get them a solid horse for Mars and Sagittarius. Okay, let's find another one. So this one enjoys making music, singing, listening to music, doing handicrafts or hobby type of arts as an outlet to their aggression, because they are otherwise too emotional to really engage in aggression. So music, singing the blues, telling sad stories is this one. Yes, Lauren, that is Mars in Cancer. So they can tell wonderful stories that are very heartfelt. Remember, Mars in Cancer is kind of like kill them with kindness, because Mars is our way of being aggressive. So Mars in Cancer is like, I'm going to sing a song that really touches your heart, or I'm going to make this handicraft, like whatever it is, a rattle, which we're still growing gourds here. I'm hoping that we'll all be able to make a rattle if we come on retreat this year. Making a rattle, and it's like a beautiful musical instrument, but it's also a craft, like an outlet for the aggression. That's Mars in Cancer. Okay, let's do this one. Boxing, hand-to-hand combat, rifle practice, or, like practice your 9mm. Go to the shooting range, which is important and necessary to know how to handle that thing correctly, or even fast driving, like a motorcycle. Yeah, that's Mars in Aries. Yeah. So if you have Mars in Aries, you have, yes, Stacy, yeah, Mars in Aries. If you have Mars in Aries, you have the strongest Mars there is, because Mars has preferences. It prefers Aries to Scorpio. So if you have that, or if you know somebody that has that, or they're your neighbor and they're shooting their gun with target practice, you've got to allow that to happen, because in their mind, that target practice is hitting the mark and they don't want to hurt anybody. So they're practicing their rifle or their 9mm or their whatever, and they're hitting the mark again and again, and that's good for them. So if you have a child with Mars in Aries, you want to make sure that they have, like, I had this one little boy, this was a great little boy, and his mom had him in boxing like at 12 years old. And when he did sessions with me, and I will do sessions for 12 or 13-year-olds, he loves to talk to me. He's like, yeah, tell me I'm going to be a world-class boxer, Lalita. Tell me I'm going to just be the best boxer ever. And I'm like, okay, so-and-so, you keep going, but you got to carefully lead into it, because you keep injuring yourself with your punches. And he like spraining his wrist and hurting his elbow and hurting his arm. So you want to give them the outlet for aggression, because you don't want them to end up like Jeffrey Dahmer, who has Mars in Aries. You want to make sure that they're playing their best game. This is the game that they've been given. So I got Claude a horse. I got him some, hematite and some iron. And I helped him along to understand himself because you don't want your people to feel bad about themselves. They're in a bad neighborhood. They got Mars and Aries. Like that, you got to help them to use that as a very effective warrior, like a light warrior, someone who can use that for good because they know how to use a gun or they know how to box or whatever. So I have a neighbor in Florida that does know how he works as a trainer, as a teacher, and he's part of the NRA. And I'm not going to be mad about that or upset about that because you need to know everybody's chart and what they've been through in their life and how to help them express that aggression. It's really important with Mars because we're in this neighborhood. Everyone's got Mars. So if you're an effective manager, so Cass, you have a question? Let me get to the chat so I can see that better. I'm thanking you all also for keeping yourself muted because I don't really know how. Hematite will help. Yes. Okay. So the question is if there is a Mars Nessus, even by transit, have hematite. This is a bracelet. This is a stone. It's really soft too. It's got like these little bubbles on it, and they can use it like a worry stone. Like they're very upset and they don't know how to get over their aggression. They can hold it. And also, I had a client too about, oh yeah, we'll talk after the recording. I had a client talking about how to help an unconscious situation. Hand signals and keywords, or that they can express themselves so they don't get hurt or they don't hurt others. So, give them little tools and helpers. Like if they're getting out of control and they go for their hematite, and you can just sit with them and be like, yeah, that's great, you grabbed the hematite instead of like punching somebody. Like that's good. Or blaming somebody or whatever it was, or whatever it is. It can also be sexual. If you read the comments on my Facebook page, the amount of sexual violation from Mars situations is just off the charts, people. And even one parent who said that in their own home, while she was homeschooling her children and trying to keep them all safe, a neighbor child came over and molested her little 4-year-old boy. Folks, I hear that every day, all day long. I've been in a counseling position since 1995. So that's when I got my master's degree in human services. And I started in a Head Start program. I was the social worker for a federally funded daycare. And my thesis was the way we parent and whether we can really help these children across the board. How many years is it since 1995 that I've been counseling? And still, people are finding out that their 4-year-old was raped or molested by a neighbor child. If we could all be that honest, then we would be able to advance as a human race. But Mars is a really scary planet. And because it's in everybody's natal chart, you want to talk with your children about hand signals. I also saw somebody, there's a lot of videos now going around with a person manhandling a woman, and she gives a little hand, she like slaps somebody and gives this hand signal like this behind her back to come and help her. Like we need to develop that because not everybody is telepathic. Yeah. So everybody wants to make sure that there is a signal for your family that if something's going wrong, talk to them right now when they're 4 years old about what could go wrong without scaring the, the crap out of them, and let them know that there's potentials in everything. Camp counselors, bus drivers, I've heard it from every level, folks. Um, Mary Ellen is saying that there is generational abuse with clients. Yeah. And so in my family, I've been very honest and open about my great grandfather was a rapist to all of his children. And my grandfather was an abuser to his children also. So it's a multi-generational thing, which is why I wrote my thesis about the way we parent and whether we could stop this cycle of abuse. So in my family, it stopped because I gave very clear indications to both of my daughters that this goes on and that we have to be honest about it. So it's a breeding program. It's been a breeding program. The women can get lost in the femme fatale kind of Jezebel, like sex kitten Venus thing. And the men can get lost in their Mars. But remember, as I said before we started recording, the only two people that I have said no to in my entire career were women, not men, women with Mars Nessus situations, women. Okay. So I'm not just, blaming men. I'm just being the messenger of information. Okay. So I think that's an hour and 43 minutes, and some people want to speak off of the record, and some people have to go. So I'm going to stop the recording and thank everyone for listening to this somewhat challenging conversation with Mars.